Hey guys, welcome back. It's been a while since I've had to talk to you this way. I'm so sorry that I'm not there and I'm quarantined and I'm sorry. I feel fine. My daughter, she tested positive for COVID, but she feels fine too. Anyway, I guess I got to talk to you like this for a little while. Please feel comfortable messaging me, emailing me, whatever you guys need, okay? All right, today we're not really doing anything new. We're just going to do more of what we started yesterday and the day before. I just want to make sure you fully understand it before I go any further, okay? So hopefully you'll already know how to do this, but just in case you don't, here's another review. Okay, so first I want you to visualize these answers, okay? I'm supposed to draw a new image for each of these. For the first one, we're reflecting across the x-axis. So first, visualize that x-axis, this guy right there, okay? And we're going to flip this triangle over that red line. So for every point that you have over here on this side, we've got to flip it and put it on the other side of that red line. So count squares. W right now is 2 squares away from the red line. So I'm going to go 2 squares away the opposite direction. My new W would be this guy right here. Oops. And then my new W, since it's the new point, we're going to name that, label it W prime. Sorry, technical difficulties. W prime. Now X over here. Count the number of squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares to get to that red line. So I need to go 5 squares the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and that point should go right here. I kind of almost got it right there. Okay, and that's going to be my new X. We call that X prime. And then this guy. Count the number of squares away from the red line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go 5 the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's my new V prime. V prime. Okay, try to connect those with straight lines. I might have an advantage. Let's see. Computers do make that easier. There we go. And that is my new image. And we call this first black triangle is the pre-image. Okay, so visualize these next ones. I'm not going to do all of them because I think you get the idea. Let's just find the line that you have to flip it over and make sure you would at least visualize it right, okay? Number 2, if we go across the y-axis, that would mean we're flipping it across this line. So hopefully you can visualize the D that's on this right side is now going to be 1 unit away on the other side. And that will be my new D. And this E over here is going to be over here. The F over here is going to be an F over here. And connect those dots. Okay, I have the answer in here, I think. There you go. Hopefully that's what you visualized. Number 3, X equals -1. Where is that sucker? First of all, go to the X-axis and find -1, which would be right here. That is the line that we have to flip over. So for each point that's on this triangle, we need to find a matching point equal distance on the other side of that blue line. So if K is 1, 2 units away from the blue line, then my new K will be 1, 2 units away over here. Okay? So hopefully you can visualize what that would look like. J is 2 units away also. And I is 1, 2, 3, 4 units away. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to look something like that. Okay? And then the last one, y equals -1. Go to the y-axis, find -1. Make sure that's the line you're going across. So once again, for every point you see on the original image, you're going to put it on the other side of that line. So I'm starting with V. The V over here is 1 unit away. My new V will be 1 unit away on the other side. U is 1 unit away. The new U will be 1 unit away on the other side. T is 2 squares away. I gotta go 2 squares away. And I don't know what letter that is. I can't see it. Maybe it's a W. And it is 1, 2, 3, 4 away. So 1, 2, 3, whoops, I lost count. Okay, 4 away from the blue line. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, connect them. Sound effects, fun. And that's my new image. Okay? All right, so hopefully those are easy. I don't think you need to memorize anything for those. You just need to know what the lines look like, okay? But yesterday, I think you may remember that the diagonal lines were a little bit harder for some people. So I'm going to show you another option. These 4, as long as you know how to draw the line and you know how to reflect across it like we just did, you're good, okay? We don't need to memorize any of the rules. But when we go across the diagonal lines, memorizing the rules might be easier for you. Let's see. Okay, so first, what does the line y equals x look like? Okay, that's the diagonal line that goes through the origin. Dang, it's so much easier when I'm doing it with this thing. That's y equals x. On number 6, y equals negative x. Boop, would look like that. Okay? And if you use a straight edge, since you don't have the fancy schmancy computer thingy that I've got going on here, use a straight edge, make sure you get that line right. Okay, now reflecting across these lines. Reflecting across y equals x, I said I just sort of count diagonal for the diagonal ones. Some of you got that right away. It was no big deal. You thought that was great. Some of you, the diagonal ones didn't really work out for you. It was confusing to you. Let me show you what I mean. K right now is, let's count diagonally. 1 diagonal, 2 diagonals, and a half. 2.5 diagonals away, okay? So then I'm going to count 2.5 diagonals on the other side of it. Okay, let me show it again. 1, 2.5, a half, 1, 2. This would be my new K right here. Now, if that's confusing to you, then there's another option that I'm going to show you in a minute. And that involves using the rules. Okay, let me neaten that up a little bit. Okay, L would be 1.5 away. 1.5, so a half and 1. My new L would be right there. It'd be my L prime. Okay, now M is also 1.5 away, so a half, 1. My new M would be right here. And then finally N. N is counting diagonally, 1 diagonal, 2 diagonals, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other side. Let me double check that, count a little slower. Okay, connect the dots. This is my favorite part now. And okay? And you should be able to check it by folding along that red line, and the black shape and the red shape should line right on top of each other. But that counting diagonal thing, it could be confusing. I mean, you have to really focus on going diagonal and not missing the point, you know? So let's talk about a rule instead, because you might find that's easier. So how would you find a rule? Pick any one of these points. Start with the original M or the original K or whatever. Okay, if I start with M, my original M had coordinates right 2, down 1, 2, negative 1. Now let's compare that to M prime. M prime, my new M, has coordinates negative 1, 2. Just look at that one point. Pick any one point. What do you think happens? Okay, what happened to the X and the Y? They just reversed. So your rule would be, for anything where you're going across this diagonal line, y equals x, to get your new point, take your original coordinates and reverse them. In other words, your original point maps to, and my rule would be, just reverse them, yx. If you understand the rules better, then it might be easier for you to figure out the coordinates of each point and reverse them and regraph. Okay? So that's if you're good at remembering rules, or maybe you just do it for the first point, the counting diagonal until you remember the rule. You don't have to memorize this rule, but you might think it's easier. Okay? Similarly, I'm going to come up with a rule for a reflection across y equals negative x. Okay, so I graphed it a little neater. The first one we just did, number 5, we came up with the rule that if you're not good at counting diagonal for the diagonals, then the other option is to figure out the coordinates of the points you're given and then just reverse them. Well, I've already graphed number 6 for you. So now let's see if we can figure out the rule. Again, you could either just count diagonally to that line, go right through the diagonals of the squares, or let's see if we can figure out this rule. Let's use point U. The coordinates of the original U, the pre-image, the black one, would be over 2 and up 3. U prime, our answer, the coordinates of U prime are negative 3, negative 2. Okay, so what happened? What would our rule be? Well, first of all, x, y maps to. Okay, are the x's and the y's in the same order? Nope, they reversed again. We have a y and an x, but they also did what? They also switched signs. So if you understand what this is telling you, it's telling you a quicker way to find the new point without having to graph it, and maybe it's a little less confusing, okay, if you can remember those. Now, I just noticed you may not be able to see that. I'm going to write that again. Okay, so again, if you're good with just counting squares and counting diagonal for diagonal lines, that's fine. You do not have to memorize this, okay? You do not need to memorize these rules. But if you think it's quicker or you get confused when counting diagonally, then you can use these rules if it's easier for you, okay? Number 6, let's say I know, once I know the rule, here's how you could do that to graph. If this point here, which I think is a T, is currently at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, okay, so the current T is at 5, 0, then I can graph T prime by just using the rule. Reverse the two numbers and change both signs. Well, you can't change a 0. And that's why T prime is here at 0, negative 5. Okay? All right. Again, using the rules is optional. It's just if it's easier for you. Okay. What do we have next? All right. For this next slide, I give you the pictures and you have to write the rule. Now, be warned, you currently have both translations or slides and reflections or flips. So the first thing you're going to want to do is figure out which one it is. If it just slides left and right or up and down but doesn't change direction, then you know it's a translation. So number 8 is a translation. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, back to number 8. Okay, number 8 is a translation. And I'll have to write A. That's not number 8. Backwards. Sorry, here's number 8. Number 8 is still a translation. So I'm going to write translation, and now I have to write my rule. X, Y maps to, and now we got to figure out what we do to get from the original black image to the new blue image. Okay? So just look at one point. The original D right here, that didn't quite work out either, did it? The original D right here to the new D right here. What direction did it go? To get from the first D, which is the black one, to the new D, which is the blue one, I had to go left 3 and up 1. That means my rule is left 3, up 1. And that's it. Okay? So number 9, translation or reflection. Shift or flip. It's in the same order, so that's another translation. And you could write the rule similarly. To get from this G to this G, I have to go left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So X, Y maps 2. I went left 5, and I have to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 4. Y minus 4. Okay? That's for translations. But 10 and 11, they've changed direction. So those are not translations. Those are flips. If it flips over a line, you now have to call that the fancy word reflection. Okay? And you've got to figure out what line it flips over. So pick any 2 points, Q and Q prime, R and R prime, the two that are closest together. Okay, I'm going to use R and R prime. And find the point directly in the middle of them. Right in between this R and this R prime would be this guy. Well, that's my axis that I flipped over. So this is what I reflected across. So reflect across the y-axis. Okay? How about number 11? That's another reflection. Can you see what it's flipped over? Okay, right smack dab between the two H's and the two J's would be this line. So that one's reflected across the x-axis. Okay, a little trickier. Last slide, I promise. Can you visualize what you're flipping over for each of these? And they're all flips. Okay, find the point in the middle. In the middle of the two T's would be right here. Darn it, I did it again. Okay, in the middle of the two T's would be right here. In the middle of the two, whatever that letter is it an H, H prime? Well, they have the same point, so in the middle is that point. So the line that they're flipping over is this one. And visualize folding it, okay? So what is the equation of that line? It goes through the x-axis at -1. So this reflects across x equals -1. Reflect across x equals -1. Okay, can you visualize number 13? Halfway between those two shapes, I think that one's pretty straightforward, would be this line. What is the equation of that line? It goes through the y-axis at -1. So you'd have to write reflect across y equals -1. Okay, now let's look at the ones that overlap like this. This is a little trickier, I think. But you can still do the same thing. Find 2 points, like the two F's, F and F prime. The point in the middle of them would be right here. The point in the middle of E and E prime would be right here. The point in the middle of D and D prime would be right here. G and G prime would be right here. This is the line you reflected across. Okay, so what is that line? It goes through the x-axis at 1, so that one's x equals 1. Last one. Okay, it's a flip, but gosh, my eyeballs have to cross to see what's going on here. So focus on just 1 point at a time. Okay, I'm going to do R. Is that an R? R and R prime. Halfway between R and R prime would be 1, 2, 3, I think this guy right there. Count squares. Yep, that's in the middle. Halfway between the two S's would be right there. Halfway between the T's would be right there. Halfway between the, is that a U? I can't tell. U's would be right there. This is the line that you had to have reflected it across. And that again is the line y equals -1. Okay, hopefully that helps. Again, nothing really new, sort of the same thing we did yesterday. You do have to know how to name your lines. Remember, if they're vertical and go through an x-axis, they're x equals. If they're horizontal and go through the y-axis, they're y equals. And I think it helps to draw them first. Good luck, guys. I hope you're doing okay. Please, please, please feel free to message me if you have any questions. Good luck. Help each other out. Thank you.